Waiting for Instagram. Waiting for Facebook. Okay. Hello, everyone. We're up and unexpectedly starting our show today for Courage and Cannabis on a Tuesday, mainly because of some major news information. And so it's, if you have heard any of the rumors or any of the information going around, there has been a press release stating that the Biden administration plans to reclassify marijuana, easing restrictions nationwide. And so, as the rumor mills usually go, I got a great call from Waxy today to really where he was sharing his opinion. Candy sent me information this morning, and so I felt it was necessary and a great idea for us to get on here and talk about this information, which can be a huge change for so many of us in the industry. So, Waxy, go ahead and get us started.
Sure. So, Dr. Bridget, Candy, first, thanks for letting me on the show again today. I appreciate you guys having us on when it's most important, and today is a most important day. So the Biden administration did signal today, the DEA signaled today that they are going to reschedule to a Schedule 3 drug, which completely changes the whole ball game. And before I start, I want to say one thing. Schedule 1 means that up until this point today, the federal government has recognized cannabis as having no medicinal value whatsoever. As of today, the federal government, this goes through and it goes through its, and I'll explain how it's going to go through and everything. Once it's finished, at that point, the United States is going to recognize cannabis as a something with medicinal value. So I think it's really important before we even start the show off to give flowers where flowers are due. Dr. Bridget, for years you have told your medical community exactly what this plant is, what it provides, where it's at, and as of today, they get to learn that from their perspective and their standards. But you had already set that standard a long time ago, and it's going to be wonderful to watch the medical community begin to grasp the understanding that you've been trying to give them for a long time now. So thank you, Dr. Bridget, for paving the way for our medical community on what's about to become the loudest conversation they've ever had inside every hospital.
Well, I will tell you that a part of, wait, did I hit something? I might have. Okay, sorry about that. No, I will tell you right from the beginning, I always kind of look down the road. I'm always thinking, what is our next step? We're in this industry. How long is it going to, when is it going to become profitable? When is it going to be helpful? Is the research going to help? But I'm always looking down the road. And right from the beginning, I've had my eyes on Big Pharma for a long time. And I have been doing talks across the country, basically saying for a long time, look, they're going to come in and they see what we're doing. They're doing the research. And when they are ready is when everything will change. When they are ready, they will take over. And are we prepared as an industry to be able to manage that? And to be honest, when there's a lot of incredible things with it becoming Schedule 3, don't get me wrong, I want to know, is the industry prepared?
So when you talk about the industry, there's two industries that need to be prepared here, the biggest and the best, right? And that's going to be one, Big Pharma. They're already prepared, and I'll tell you how. It's because Big Canna has already paved the road for them. As we start to realize what is happening right now, we're going to allow lots and lots of research on this plant inside the United States of America, which hasn't happened. It's happened in very limited amounts so far. Now that we're able to research this plant, Big Pharma has a reason to be in the room, okay? They cannot put a patent on this plant. We know that. But what they can do is they can purchase everything, and they've got the money to do it. Big Canna thinks that they've seen money from big dollars before, big checks. They've not seen the type of checks that Big Pharma is going to come in and write here. And the type of checks that Big Pharma is going to come in and write to these cannabis companies for this flower, for this research, for these ideas, for these inhalers, for all the patents out there, all of them, all the patents are for sale. When Big Pharma comes in and writes those checks, they'll be some of the smallest checks Big Pharma's written. So we've got a big gap here where, unfortunately, the good and the bad come marching in with every decision, right? Now, I know, Candy, your idea of what legalization is, your version is probably a little different than what I think. I believe cannabis should be on tables like tomatoes at the farmers markets. I know I can't have that. Dr. Bridget's version is going to be different than mine, because Dr. Bridget's going to think in a research term and where can we get at the end of the day? How do we get this in an IV bag for patients that need it instead of narcotics? We all have our different versions. But unfortunately, Big Pharma is the one that's writing the check to the lobbyists who are making these things happen. And they are going to be able to come in and with their dollars, their purchasing power, they're going to form a brand new type of cannabis industry. And the big MSOs, the big cannabis companies, they'll go marching right along with them, which isn't such a bad thing in some terms, because we all expected Marlboro and Coca-Cola and Pfizer to get into the game at the end of the day. They're going to have their game, but they're not after the cannabis industry, because the cannabis industry only sells about 10% of the cannabis in the United States. The rest of it is sold by the traditional market. So that little purchase by Big Pharma of purchasing the cannabis industry, when that comes along, it's not a big purchase for them. It's getting into the Walmarts, the Walgreens, the hospitals, the normalization, the bars, the pubs, the nursing homes, the veterinarian clinics. It's all that is where Big Pharma is going to find their path. They're not worried about the dealer like Big Cannabis was, but they're also not worried about Big Cannabis, because Big Cannabis has and always has had price tags all over it. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes very quickly, because we're talking about something that's happening, not going to happen or could happen. It's happening. So a lot of companies woke up this morning, found this out, and they're being very reactive. And I won't harp on this point very, very much longer, but what I will say is that everybody thinks that the big investors and the CEOs in Big Cannabis, that they're the ones that woke up and got a big windfall today. And guess what? They think that they did. Those CEOs think that they won big today. Legalization, no more interstate commerce. And I'll talk about that. We've had restrictions on interstate commerce with cannabis, which, because we've got 50 states, 50 different markets, that's how it's always had to be. But these cats don't realize that they were the big sharks yesterday. The big cannabis companies, they were the sharks in the water, and that's okay to be the big guy in the water. But what just happened is the federal government just released the orca, the killer whale, the thing that comes in and it's got an appetite for everything, and it's not going to stop until it owns everything. And that's the predator that we have in the water as of a little bit ago was Big Pharma. Big Pharma has the ability to come in and shift the conversation, and conversation shifters can be good or they can be bad. We know that, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking at the Instagram messages here. You don't see it on your end. But there's so much talk on this end about how it's going to change, how this is really a historic day, how it's the insurance companies, health benefits. There's, depending on your point of view, today means something different. Okay.
Well, they're talking about something really important. Today changed the atmosphere for every business. Any business, I'm able to utilize the 280E tax code, which means that I can write everything off that I use for business. Cannabis companies cannot, up until the passage of this. Cannabis companies could not. So they're eating up to 70% of their profits just in doing the cost in doing business alone. So when we think these big guys are out there making hand and fist money, they're not. The ones that are going to make hand and fist money are the ones that can react to this correctly. Your Marlboros are going to make a ton of money. Your Coors Lights, you're all the cats that are going to come in from Pfizer to everybody else. They understand how to handle these tax codes the right way. These cannabis companies can now begin to operate, not now, but as soon as this is finished, can begin to operate under those codes, which means that they're going to be able to make a lot more money, hire a lot more people, give health benefits, 501ks, all that stuff now is applicable. And directly after this announcement was made, Chuck Schumer came out and said the very next step that we have is safe banking laws. We have to push the safe banking because that allows for loans, banking. There's a reason that minorities aren't in this because they were pushed out. Minorities were completely pushed out of the one industry that minorities have always thrived in the traditional market. Pushed out over not the inability to be able to launch a $5 billion brand. Well, now that all that issue goes away, now we can fund people. We can get them loans. We can get people grants for all kinds of wonderful things that are happening. And like, that's the thing. Big Canna is going to shift in a different direction. But the cannabis industry, the micro licensing industry, the mom and pop shops, this is the time where we can catch legs and build brands and thrive.
Absolutely. So one of the questions on Instagram, and I know that we're kind of, all over the place with this and really talking about, the impact that this information has. But one other question is, what is the downside? And I don't want anyone to think that we're coming on here saying this is horrible and negative and what have you. But if you can maybe simplify, because there's a lot of good stuff with this. We've been waiting for this, but I think go ahead.
Go ahead, Doc. Sorry.
No, I'm saying I think there's an aspect of this, and sometimes it's simply the unknown, right? But there's an aspect of this that will really affect some businesses, meaning it's going to affect people in a way when big pharma comes in and buys out some of the businesses that we know. A negative aspect of this is now the pharmaceutical companies will now have a huge buy into this, and we know how big pharma works. So now keep in mind, that's a projection. That is the unknown. I don't want to sound like this is a negative thing by any means. We've been looking and waiting for this to happen. But it is the aspect where we wonder when big pharma takes over, and that's inevitable, what is it going to look like for the big businesses, for the small businesses, for the patients? There are a lot of great things that can happen for patients, but will you get access to what you actually want? The dispensaries are going to make, or I should say the processors are going to make what sells in dispensaries. And so that means, will you only be able to go to get a prescription for pills and capsules from your doctor to get more medicinal aspects? Will you be able to get what you're looking for? Or because the pharmaceutical companies are going to invest in some aspects and the recreational market will invest in others?
So I want to talk about 3 different cons, and that is a pro and a con that you're talking about with big pharma, because, and I'll start with that one. It can be a con that big pharma is going to step into the game, but it could also be a plus, because what they're not good at, they're not good at gardening. Big pharma's never gone out and grew whatever plants you use for whatever medicine. That's not their thing. So you're not going to get your flower, which is what we all smoke. You're not going to get your flower from big pharma. They're going to end up owning MSOs and big companies out there. But at the end of the day, the next time you walk into Walgreens or a Walmart, all you need to do is simply look around at those products. There's a lot of toxins in there that THC and other cannabinoids replace. Big pharma now has permission to make those replacements. So the argument that we've always had that they're toxic, they're going to go in a non-toxic route because that's what their buyer and their consumers wanting out of them. That's what the world is talking about now.
Maybe, because if it's more expensive to replace it, they might just keep doing. We've always had better options. We've always had some better option.
Sure. But at the end of the day, also, this isn't expensive, and big pharma knows that. Like a THC distillate is very inexpensive compared to what they're purchasing now. And in reality, there's almost none of those products that they're putting on those shelves. We're going to see cannabis just got put into the same exact schedule as a coated Tylenol. So you got to think, like, at that point, that's really where we're going to go with this, is they're going to begin to implement it into products, not as solo projects like we have in the cannabis space. I also think another big one that people need to realize with this is that One of the other cons to this is that it's not legalizing cannabis. We're still illegal. It did not legalize it in any way, shape, or form. They just rescheduled it. So from the standpoint of we need to keep nobody belongs in jail for a plant, we still have a problem out there. And like I've always said, we're always going to have to continue to have these battles and these fights and these conversations. The other big one that I see a real problem with here, a real problem, is that a lot of these states, including my own, are operating under state regulations. Okay, we passed a certain bill, or in Missouri, we did it by voter initiative, things like that. Now, according to the federal constitution, which now cannabis is going to have to be under, okay, because it's now not a Schedule 1, it's Schedule 3. So certain parts of our constitution are going to matter right now. And part of that is interstate commerce. A lot of these states, you can't sell cannabis in any state because it's federally illegal. You can't cross those borders with that cannabis and sell it from seed to sale tracking system to another seed to sale tracking system. That's illegal. According to interstate commerce laws in our original constitution, by our founders, dictated to us that all states will sell and trade amongst themselves. So we will be able to do that. That will get broken down. The other part is states where you had lotteries or closed marketing, a certain amount of licenses given out. That's not legal either. In the United States commerce, in our Constitution, interstate commerce and our commerce laws state that you can't do that. You can't limit a trade or any kind of industry by numbers like that. That's not legal either. So a lot of these states are going to have to react to this through lawsuits, through courts, through judges that are going to have to understand that the federal government just made this conversation legal. So everything that you guys did in your state constitutions will stand. If you have a great program in your state, it will stand, except for certain parts of it will not. Those parts of the Constitution that state residency requirements, that state, because I can buy a business in Illinois all day long if I want. Illinois cannot legally keep me from buying a business in Illinois because I'm a United States citizen. So when you had licensing open up in these states, that was not legal. If this was a legal plant, if it was a Schedule 3 at the time, they would not have been able to legally land those, which would have hurt a lot of states because that was part of the palpability behind a lot of this legislation, was that it's limited. Folks, calm down. We're not putting a dispensary on every corner. Well, this could change everything because interstate commerce and our standard constitutional laws say that that is illegal. So now we're going to see things change a lot when it comes to the actual industry itself. 50 states, 50 different markets, that ain't a thing anymore. That ain't legal.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So where do you think we're going to be able to get the most reliable information about how, because there's so many moving parts?
I would tune into Courage and Cannabis with Dr. Bridget and Candy. That's where I get all my info. I try myself to get my information from as many. I try to get my information from as close to the top as I can as it's coming down. Yeah. So for some people, that means different things. Like people right now, 3/4 of the United States of America probably has no idea this just happened because they're just getting off work, heading home, not realizing the atmosphere has changed. Right now, there's boardrooms across America and cannabis companies and Marlboro and Coors and Pfizer and all these companies that are getting together at these tables and reacting to this because they weren't ready for it. That's just the truth. The world was not ready to wake up this morning and hear that this was going to happen. I think that another part of this that people are sleeping on is Doc B. That when you got mad at Big Pharma and medical Western medicine, and you said, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. There was a reason for that because you knew they were in the wrong. Well, so did all the money. So did all the real money behind everything. So did the investors. So did everything else. They also weren't ready. With this rescheduling comes the sophisticated money. All the universities are going to get research money poured into them by every direction that you can imagine. The folks who have been out there doing this, who understand the conversation of cannabinoids and what they do in your master control system and this industry and even the repercussions of legalization or not legalization. All of these conversations, the rest of the world is waking up to them, but let's make sure that they get it the right way because the United States government is going to use this simply as a political tool to pass an election, a certain candidate and all that. when in reality, it changes the scope of Western medicine as we speak right now today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
No, I hear you. So,
And I'll tell you, oh, go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, what type of conversations have you had with other people today?
I've called a few different people today, including some of the higher ups with some of the cannabis companies to find out how they were reacting. I talked to Chip Paul, my endocannabinoid forensic researcher friend. He's jumping up in arms. He's just, absolutely flabbergasted. I got a lobbyist friend of mine here in Missouri who's worked really hard for people to try and get people to understand what the 2-year conversation meant instead of the 6-month conversation. So everybody I'm talking to out there is ecstatic but hesitant at the same time, right? Because we always understand that something like this might seem so positive and so good, but like your Instagram viewers are saying, like there's a negative to everything. There's cons to everything, and that's the thing now is like, do we want big pharma in? A lot of people will tell you hell no because they've harmed us in the past. I would say it like this: I absolutely do need big pharma to take the challenge of getting this medicine out there at the correct way, understanding the ensemble effect of using all the cannabinoids, understanding that we are the replacement for most of the things that you're dealing with out there. You guys have A1C issues, we got that. You got diabetes issues, we got that. You got heart problems, we've got answers to that. You want to put your Monster drink down and your Red Bull and take up some THCV instead of taurine and be healthy? We've got all the answers out here. The problem is that they've been anecdotal until now. And so now we're going to open up this big can of worms. We can't put Pandora back in the box. And we're going to begin to see products go marching out, brands go marching out, ideals that people have about cannabis. It all falls away. The fastest way to normalization is, unfortunately, descheduling and rescheduling. This is a massive positive blow in the right direction. But like we've said about this plant from the very beginning, we're activists for a reason. We're advocates for a reason, because we're never going to get exactly what we want. We always are going to want more. We won't be satisfied. And with this will come some of that, like your listeners were saying, they're not going to be satisfied with some of the things that come along with this.
That's right. Thank you, Waxy.
Yeah, you bet. It'll be interesting to see the moves that are made over the next, because you'll see this will land. What first has to happen is we're going to send this the recommendation that the DOJ will send that to Office of Bureau Management, Office of Management. Anyway, the OMB office and White House, and then at that point they approve it, send it back. It gets a public comment section that they have to give for a little bit, and then that goes to the president's desk. So we're looking at about a 4-month window until this is at 100% completion.
Yeah, that I was going to say, we're looking at anywhere, a couple to maybe 4 months, 4 to 5 months for this to go through. So with people that are just joining and coming on, today we were talking about the latest news coverage that came out this morning, that they are now moving ahead with rescheduling cannabis from Scheduled 1 to now being Scheduled 3. And how the community is reacting to this, how patients should be reacting to this. There's a lot of great aspects to it. There's some aspects that might be of concern. And keep in mind that if you're not aware as much, marijuana has been on the Scheduled 1 list of medications and drugs. Schedule 1 means that it has no medicinal value, means that it's incredibly dangerous. So we're talking about cannabis, heroin, LSD, ecstasy. All of these are considered street drugs, no medicinal value, and highly dangerous. Okay. By moving down to Schedule 4 means that it has more medicinal value, but still some warning. I'm sorry, 3. What did I say? 4? Moving down to Schedule 3 means it has some medicinal value, but still has some level of warning. So other drugs that are on Schedule 3 are ketamine, testosterone, anabolic steroids. These are all things that we look at that if advised with medical supervision, you're able to take. but they are not to be used from street drugs or unsupervised. So, like anabolic
So
steroids,
can
we
we,
know.
can we tell the audience what they can compare the Schedule 3 to?
Yes.
as far
So, like ketamine,
for those that don't know.
right?
Mhm.
So, testosterone, anabolic steroids are a few of the ones that you might be more familiar with. And Tylenol, I think you said earlier, Waxy, Tylenol with codeine is considered on this list. So these are drugs that can be prescribed. They're obviously provided if they are approved. They are FDA approved, and there are definitely rules about how you refill them, right? So they're just not out there willy-nilly. And so this is a big move, something that was supposed to happen the early 70s. Cannabis was never supposed to stay as a Scheduled 1 drug. It was supposed to be there for a short amount of time until further research during the Nixon administration, and yet it never moved. And so this is honestly correcting a
And
wrong, as far as I'm concerned.
My hippies, my deadheads in the hippies in the 60s and 70s, they did the research. I know it was done. I've seen the pictures. I've watched the concerts. It was done. The research was done.
The research was done, but Nixon was mad.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he was at odds with a great deal of the community that was pro-cannabis. The younger community did not support his administration. And in response, he was like, let's just keep it there. I don't really care. And it was a way, it was part of the kind of the rooting of this war on drugs. It was a way to retaliate. It was a way to pick on people and to put them into jail for a joint, one joint, right?
I often believe that if Nixon had listened to the Grateful Dead instead of Elvis, we'd probably be in a way different place right now. So I want to point out something.
Elvis listened to the Grateful Dead, and we might be in a different place right now. But
I want to point out something. First off, I saw somebody ask when this would be enacted. I believe it's going to be going to the president's desk within, and to be signed within a 4-month window is what we're looking at here. I saw Trinity put that. And then another thing I wanted to point out. I want to point out something right now, that a move that a lot of people I don't think are seeing that Big Pharma is making. And that's, yes, we've got cannabis that just got descheduled, right? So Big Pharma is going to be able to make their play under the counter. They're going to be able to make, they just got put in the same spot as a codeine covered Tylenol, right? So with that comes they can now put that THC in many different products that they have under the counter. But what about over the counter? What about regular Tylenol, regular Bayer, regular? Well, we also have the 2018 Farm Bill, okay, which legalized hemp, anything under the 3%. Now, if you're studying the Farm Bill, in 2024, they're going to announce the new Farm Bill. The new Farm Bill is going to raise that to the international standard of 1%. If you know your science and your cannabinoids, that ends up being that cannabis and hemp, the THC molecule no longer is an argument. Some are used for some applications, some are used for others. But at the end of the day, that THC molecule will no longer have that political cannabis moniker attached to it. So at the end of the day, they can take Farm Bill compliant products, and if they've got their Bayer extra strength THC, they got their Bayer lower strength THC sitting on the counter over here too. It's going to be everywhere. When I say look at the shelves, I mean it. This gives them the ability, now that the door is open, it gives them a reason to start putting hemp products everywhere as well. So that being said, you're going to watch a lot of these different pharmaceutical companies who are providing all those compound pharmaceutical products, meaning the aspirin that's in the Bayer, the this that's in that, the compound that's in this. Those compounds are going to start to look real cannabinoid-ish to us, and they are going to be. And we're going to be able to see Big Pharma switching over to, not only are they going to build out products that are going to take the place of that, the manufacturing itself, the conversation is changing overnight.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the one question I'm wondering about, though, is who's going to be, if we're talking about still plant derived or even you know, synthetic medications, cannabinoids, who's in charge of the testing? Is Big Pharma going to be in charge of the testing now? Who's going to, and what happens to all of these testing facilities?
It's a great question. So at the end of the day, we already know that that cannabis has. Let's just say that the cannabis testing facilities have dropped the ball, dropped the mark all the way. Every state. I'm not exactly sure about Missouri because I haven't seen any issues here, but we see lots of real bad issues with those testing facilities, whether it's punching potency numbers, whether it's hiding things that their friends have on there that they shouldn't, or whether they're legit and they're shunned by the industry for being too legit. So here's what you're going to see, I believe. And listen, I'm just a stoner that thinks about these things. I believe that we're going to see our existing testing facilities thrive that are inside each state. Because what I think the federal government's going to end up doing is putting what we'll call a reference lab in every state. That reference lab, if you want to go out into interstate commerce, you want to sell something out of state, it needs a COA that's verified by Missouri's reference lab. It will be referenced by reference labs across the United States. I bet there'll be something like regional, 3 or 4 over here in this western part of the United States, 3 or 4 in the eastern part. Those COAs are what will allow those products to move in and out of all those states, whether they're hemp, whether they're cannabis. Like I said, at the end of the day, when the Farm Bill drops, you can stop talking about hemp, marijuana, and cannabis, and you can just call it the plant. Because at the end of the day, we're taking molecules and we're doing something with them now. We're not just growing them behind our garage. So it's a different conversation altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know you have this up here, Candy. Yeah, Trinity's question. Yep, go ahead.
Yes. What's this do for the interstate commerce?
So first off, interstate commerce is something that every single American is given. It's our American values are meant for us to come into this country, build businesses, make money, use commerce, democracy. It all works hand in hand, right? So you can't say no to the founders. You just can't. If it's in the Constitution, it stays there, which interstate commerce does. There's laws that protect me if I start a business. If I want to sell this ink pen, okay, there's no law that legally could tell me I can only sell my ink pen in Missouri. Okay, I can sell this in all 50 states, anywhere I want to that I'm legally allowed to. So the same thing happens with cannabis. Now that it's become now that it's about to become federally rescheduled to 3, that means that interstate commerce is legal. That means that you can't make it illegal. So when you talk about interstate commerce, you're going to see it different, right? So the cannabis industry is different than most industries. When you go into a Missouri dispensary, you see only Missouri products. When you go into a New Mexico dispensary, only New Mexico products. So start to think of it like the hemp products. The hemp products are companies that are made in one state, but they could sell them in all 50 states unless a state makes it illegal in that state to sell that product. So it's kind of the same way. Cannabis is now going to be legally allowed. Okay, and some states are going to fight this. Some companies think that their big imaginary dollar comes in only that state, and they don't want to share territory or gain territory. But they're scared of losses and afraid of gains is what it really comes down to. And I don't understand that mentality, because I believe that if you're the best of the best, you should be able to sell and beat out the competition strictly by value and how good something is, the quality. So interstate commerce is about to be really real, the same way that anything else is in the United States of America, because interstate commerce is guaranteed to me. And I'm a veteran. I fought for that Constitution, so I'll fight for that conversation. It's very much within my constitutional rights to legally move about the building.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Waxy. We do have another question. Will this hurt the home grow? How will it affect them?
So it doesn't. Okay. First off, I want to say this: states that have added home grow to their legislation and constitution, good on you, because people need to be able to grow their own medicine and not pay the high prices in some places, or be able to, just like a compounding pharmacy, grow what works for them. So good on the states that did that, because you're going to be protected. The federal government's not out to take anything. They're simply out to get out of the way and collect a great big giant tax at the end of the day. So if you're cultivating in your home state and you're doing it legally, you're going to be perfectly fine. There are still the states out there that we have to fight for them because the federal government legalization isn't going to allow a home grow. It just isn't because there's nothing that incentivizes them to. Their job is to get out of the way and make money at it right now. So they're going to end up with, they'll start with 5% tax. Within 5 years, they're going to hit us with a 12.5% tax. That's going to be on every cannabis product out there. So at the end of the day, home growing is really essential to folks that don't want to pay triple and quadruple stack taxes on a plant that because they look at it like cigarettes and beer, right? It's recreational in some states, you know, and we're blessed in Missouri with a very low tax rate. But when the federal government hits me, that takes my recreational from 6 to 18.5, and I'm one of the lower tax states. So it's great.
Wow.
Not only is it going to, you're going to be okay if you're a home grower, please keep home growing. And please, if you're able in your state legally, help out your bankrupt friends.
Absolutely. You know what I love about that is that if you are allowed to home grow, and I really don't see why not, me growing tomatoes is never going to hurt. Is it Del Monte? I don't know, Del Monte, whatever. It's not going to hurt like what's on the shelf at the grocery store, right?
That's a great
And
point.
I can grow
Great point.
tons of them, and I can keep them for myself, and I can give some to my friends. I can't eat all of it, you know, whatever. I can can it, whatever, but it's not going to make that much of a dent. And so we've been doing home gardening forever across this country, and we need to do more of it, you know, in general. And it just doesn't have the impact to shut down grocery stores. And so in home grow for cannabis will not shut down dispensaries.
And I want folks to realize that it was never listen, yes, it was some of them, but in my state, it was our MSOs, basically our big companies out there, they put forward the money to legalize in Missouri, and they legalized home grow for us. And so what I can tell you there is that it isn't necessarily the industry that wants to keep us from growing. They understand that they're not going to they're not going to be able to keep us from growing weed and providing. What the problem is that each state has been palpable to the voters in a certain, we can only pass so much that until it becomes distasteful to the voter who votes us in, our initiatives, our legislation, all that stuff, right? So when you're talking about Schedule 1 and you're up there with heroin, for a lot of the voters that they want to legalize something like heroin, They want to legalize something like LSD, like it's on that level, and they want me to, So it wasn't doable. But now that the conversation has shifted, we're no longer on that list with heroin. So we're not asking them to allow us to grow our own heroin anymore. We're asking to grow our own aspirin. And that last time I checked, you know, the country is leaning, just like the folks on this podcast, is leaning into a more holistic approach nationwide.
That's right.
And aspirin is so much more dangerous than cannabis ever will be, if you want to know the real truth. So, yeah.
We
So
have
I
another
definitely
question. How will it affect dispensaries? Will anyone be able to sell or open a store?
So that's a really good question because Tracy must live. Tracy, I think you live in Missouri. So Tracy lives in Missouri, I think. And in Missouri, we have what's known as a closed market, which meant that they used lottery systems to let the people in that got in, and then they closed the market. So that makes it illegal for someone, or it makes it impossible for someone like Tracy or myself to just go up and apply for a dispensary or a cultivation, get granted, and open one up, which is how America works. We're supposed to be able to enter any industry that we choose fit, that we qualify for. So qualifications should never be because we only want 12 of them. That's not a real thing. You let the industry, let the consumer decide on products. So the problem we have is that we have closed states where people can't get in. So Tracy, the answer is this. In Missouri, I truly believe this, and a lot of my sponsors and a lot of my industry friends feel a little bit differently than I do. I believe that we are constitutionally incompliant in Missouri with our state program, meaning that according to the United States commerce laws, you should be able to, Tracy, go open a dispensary if you have the money and resources to do it. They made it impossible for you, even if you have the resources or whatever. So at this point, it comes down to, no, you can't. But if someone were to sue this program, or another state sues and causes a precedence in another state, then yes, those laws that are keeping you from opening a dispensary can get knocked down in the court of law. And in fact, have been in the past. but it wasn't precedence because we still had a federally illegal component here. So now that we're federally compliant, those precedences are all ready to be set. All of this, you can't just introduce a brand new industry overnight. There's always going to be pickles and thresholds we have to break through. That is one of them. We've got to decide where the access points are. And we don't decide who has the access points, because if you close that conversation, then it's not an industry, is it? It's a monopoly.
That's right. Thank you, Waxy. Another question. What about the micros?
So some of you folks in different states have micro license opportunities in your states, which I'm going to be very real about this, and I might make some people real mad with this one. The micro license ecospheres are important. They're a great big experiment in social equity that have gone either really well or failed miserably, and 90% of them have failed miserably. Your social equity licenses are supposed to land in the hands of disabled veterans, minorities, people who have been affected by cannabis, by prohibistic laws that put us in jail or imprisoned or searched or whatever, maced, tased, you name it. Like, we've gone through it all. Those licenses are always supposed to go towards those people in each state. Some states wrote those laws correctly. Some states didn't. In Missouri, I believe we did a pretty good job of it, but at the same time, nothing's perfect. Now, I believe that the micros are under the same threat that any business is whenever you open it up to everyone. The micro licenses were an ability for minorities and disabled veterans and folks in poorer zip codes for them to get into the industry. That's not going to matter for you guys anymore if this goes the way that I think it will, which will be constitutional disalignment. With our Missouri Constitution not in alignment with our federal Constitution, they have to align. Part of that alignment will be that, I believe, an open market. In an open market, it just doesn't matter if you're a micro or not. We'll call you a mom and pop shop. If you have that license and you're operating, I'll support you because you're a mom and pop shop. But as for the micro license, when you talk about just direct retail, it could be a big problem for folks.
Thank you, Waxy.
Thank you for the
Do
question.
you have any
That was a
more
good one.
questions on Instagram, Dr. Bridget?
Let's see. No, we're pretty good here. And honestly, this is such an important conversation that we actually really need to return back to. Obviously, there's going to be more information. I'm so happy that you came to me, earlier today, and that you took the time to have this conversation with everyone. I think it helps so many people, and it will help them understand this as more and more information comes out. Let's return back to this as it grows, because it's going to affect a lot of people. A lot of great things are going to come out of it. But people are going to be concerned. Will it hurt their businesses? Will they be able to get their medication? Will they be going to their doctors, or will they be able to go to the dispensary? And so there's something that this offers to people. I'm so grateful to be in a place to be able to share this with others. And I'm hoping that, we're on our way, and to be honest, as far as I'm concerned, if we can make these moves with cannabis, there's a lot of other things that we've missed the boat on, including mushrooms and psychedelics. And little by little, I think we have the opportunity to get people healthier in a more holistic way with greater benefits and less toxicity and side effects. If we can just return to some great plant options. If it works better, it just simply works better. And that's the case for a lot of things in the cannabis space as well as others. And I'm grateful to be in a place to be able to share it with everyone.
Well, I'd love to, before I jump off, Doc, but whenever I get a chance, I love to talk about one thing real quick, and I will combine it with conversation about what happened today. Excuse me. As we know, 22 veterans kill themselves every single day in the United States of America. I believe that number to be nearly double once you add opioids and alcohol. This is the ability right now for the Veterans Administration to be able to put this medicine within the halls of the VA, and be able to issue out cannabis cards to the veterans, which the VA is already having this conversation. Now that this illegal conversation is out of the way, I urge everyone that when you talk about this, please talk about the veterans. Please let's get this medicine in there, because we know for a fact that cannabis saves lives, and there's a great big portion of our population that's sitting in these VA homes, and we wouldn't have these laws. We wouldn't have the ability to change our laws. We wouldn't have voter initiatives or these darned politicians in there to fight for us sometimes when they do. We wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for the men and women who went out and fought for us on the front lines and the back lines. I don't care if they cooked or they shot bullets or took bullets. They were there for us when we needed them. We need to be there for them. And that means not giving them opioids, not filling them full of the codeines and all these things we can't pronounce. Let's get the right kind of medicine into these folks and give them the opportunity to be who they are, because they dropped out. They're done. We don't need to keep this up with them. So we need right now to take this opportunity to push on the VA to on board with this 100%. The hospitals, they'll get there on their own because they're funded. The VA is federally funded. It's not funded the way the other ones are. So we need to keep this conversation going. I really appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And everyone, if you're listening, follow us, subscribe, follow what we do here on Wellness Reclaimed with our Courage and Cannabis show, our Courage and Comedy show, our Healthy Relationships Only, and more shows as we roll out more opportunities. Thank you again, Waxy and Candy, for coming on tonight. And have a great night, everyone.
Stay waxy, everybody.